back to the channel. We're going to do a little bit of a recap on this car and the deal in and of itself, where we are, if we're going to make it to TogeCon with this car, and where we're at. Alright, so here's where we're at. It's been a while since I did a little bit of a longer form video, so I just kind of figured we'd kick it back to the basics, talk about this car and what it took up to this point. We'll go over what I got in it versus what I credited for value before I got into this. Now, this was a side quest. I didn't intend on working on this. It was just kind of just like an idea that I had threw around probably about a year ago when I went and bought some parts off of him, James, just, you know, off the cuff. I didn't really think anything of it. So since then, or I'd say about 2-3 weeks ago, when this car showed up along with this GTO in front of me, I just kind of figured, hey, I'm going to this event. I kind of wanted to take a cruiser to the event anyways, so we'll see where we're at. And so let's just kind of go over what we ended up with up to this point. So if you've been keeping up with my shorts and stuff up to this point, you're probably tired of seeing this car with these wheels, but just understand, for me, almost 40 now, so I'm 38, right? Back when I was in high school, these wheels were a big deal, right? And never in a million years I think I'd come to a point in my life where I'd have a set, much less for the money that I paid. And back in the day, it's funny to say that, but anyways, back in the day, you saw these wheels on F-bodies, Corvettes, 03 Cobras when they came out, and the like. You might even seen a couple of Fox bodies here and there. So to have these wheels that I originally bought for that car in there here and have it fit as well as they did, totally shooting off of the cuff with the tire fitment. Well, I say that, but outside of the initial math that I did and not really being sure if it was going to work, just because of the variables that I had to take into consideration. So what we have on the front here are 285s. These are just a used tire. It came with 4 total, but these were the rears of the set. They're 25 bucks. They're definitely worn. They're definitely a little on the old side, but for the sake of getting the car on the ground and just kind of figuring out what kind of car I had mechanically, they did the job and they hold air. So there's that. These are a set of Hoosier DOT slicks. This is a drag slick tire. Did I want to run slicks on a basically stock LT1? No, but they were 200 bucks. They came in a set. They sat in the garage for God knows how long. Never been used, never been mounted, and they were $200. They're 750 bucks new. So we got some slicks because, like I said, it completed the look, put the car on the ground, allows me to take it around the block and to see what kind of issues we got still. The interior is typical F-body. If you saw the original video when I brought it home, it was a lot rougher in here. That box is just holding that seat down because the spring's messed up, so it pops up. So I just kind of sat that in there. Getting a set of F-body seats is not hard, or seat covers, but that's an issue for another day. The carpet was way worse than this, believe it or not. But I'm going to get some shampoo and try to get the stains and stuff out the best of my ability. We bought a dash pad. That pad there was like 50 bucks before shipping on eBay. And you just glue it to the disaster that's underneath. Get a bunch of heavy things and some cardboard is what I use to stick up there and shove in the corners between the window and the edges and just let it sit for a couple days for the glue to set. And that was the finished product. It's not OEM perfect, but it's way better than it was. And for 50 bucks, I'll take it. Other than that, the interior cleaned up pretty good. Like I said, outside the carpet, wiped everything down. The T-top is missing because obviously they leak. They all leak. The doors weren't too bad. This mechanism in here was completely disassembled and it had wood holding the window itself up. I was very angry. It took me 3 hours to unfuck this, but I got it done. Got the new motor in there. Everything works, as you can see. Obviously, got new to me switches off eBay. Put those in there. There we go. So there's that. The car cleaned up. We gave it like a quick and dirty bath, if that makes any sense. yesterday, just kind of get the grime and the grit that had collected on the paint off. The paint is not that bad. You could probably save this. I'm going to try to save it because it's still shiny, right? So we'll get some time. We'll get all the Gucci paint products and we'll clay bar it and do all that stuff. I don't know about the fenders since they're fiberglass. We'll try to bring that back as best as we can, and just, same with the front bumper. We'll get it painted later, but for all the metal parts, that paint is good, with the exception of the hood, which is a disaster on the tip. I think somebody had a bra on here, because if you see the line, it looks like where a bra used to be for a very long time, and that's kind of one of the after effects of not taking care of it. Windshield is not cracked or broken. That's a plus, because I'm not trying to deal with having to replace one of those. Let's see. So in here, if you've been following, I did end up doing head gaskets on here. Took the heads to Stanley. Stanley's like, hey, I'm not telling you what to do, but I strongly suggest you let me mill these because, and he pointed out some areas around the coolant and oil return ports where he's like, I don't like how this looks, so let's just put a fresh face on it and call it good. So I did that. $200. I think he did a little extra than what he said because they looked amazing when I got them, but he neither here nor there. $200 for just a mill. The long tubes were $100. I bought those off a guy in Sand Springs, like an hour or so from here. He bought a 96 F-body, pulled the drivetrain out and put it in an S10. I bought these long tubes off of him, hacked off where they had welded in the back so that I could use them as slip-ons again. And there was that. So those went on there, and it was a huge pain in the ass trying to get the spark plugs routed where they didn't touch anything and fixed out of the way because they're long AF, unlike the much cleaner LS style that came after this, because this is a 97, so this is the last year of this engine. Same over here. Had to put that little crazy loop so it didn't touch anything, clean all that up, and just kind of zip tie it up along the block so it didn't touch there. That's part of the old air pump system. I'll take that out once we pull the engine out for whatever reason. But it was a real pain in the butt to get to that tube, so that tube's just going to stay where it's at for right now. Bought this metal tube and that piece with a little coupler there for $25. Marketplace for the win. Long tubes, $100. Marketplace for the win. Bought a new water pump. That was like $120, I think. Radiator is not punctured or broken. That held. Bought a new cap. That was like, I don't know, $20 or something. The belt was in good shape when it showed up, so just put that back on there. It already had a new Opti on it. The spark plug wires were new, some performance brand. They had been chewed in a few areas, so I just hit it with some electrical tape where it was worn through. And the areas that were just nibbled on, didn't worry about it because, like I said, I didn't know anything about this car other than it ran, and it was in pieces when I got it. So I wasn't trying to spend more money than I needed to because it was just a handshake deal. And with that, I was just trusting that what he was telling me was true. And it turned out to be so. Now, a lot of this is from the original factory setup because there's like a evap solenoid, which I believe is here because it runs from the fuel tank tube. It runs with the fuel lines all the way back to the tank. Oh. Sorry, got a call. Back to the tank for the fuel vapor solenoid or whatever it is. I added a fuel pressure gauge and a adjustable fuel pressure regulator. Now, on the newer cars, LS or whatever, those features aren't necessarily needed because they're built into the PCM. You can adjust fuel pressure electronically, and you can see fuel pressure in the laptop when you're data logging stuff. You can't do that with these older cars. And so back in the day, those two modifications were pretty standard when you were doing anything outside of bone stock, and it's just nice to have. So if you're troubleshooting, you just look at the gauge and it'll tell you if you have a fuel pressure issue, or adjust it if you're changing injectors, changing the pump, and the injectors require you to run a specific pressure, since we can't do that in the PCM. Now, there is an upgrade or a modification where you can run what's called a 411 or PK411 ECU, because even though the LT1 died in the F-body in 97, because the 98 was the first year of the LS1, GM continued to run this engine in a few different platforms. And so those platforms got an updated PCM called a PK 411. I'll correct it because I don't remember what it was, but something 411. And it gave you the same or similar tuning and adjustable features as all the P40, like in the GTO, and all the LS computers, P38s and the like. So I may look at doing that later if we keep the car long term, because right now I don't know. It was just kind of a thing to see, a challenge I set for myself to see if I can get it done to take it to Fayetteville this weekend, just to hot rod around in it. And you know, it started under a tree in pieces, and yeah, here it is in my driveway, looking fairly clean, pretty clean, honestly, and running really well. I've heat cycled it 2 or 3 times now. The coolant system seems to be in touch. I let it idle for about 15 minutes. I don't have O2 sensors on or connected, and it's open long tube. So it really doesn't want to do much more than idle. I mean, you could do more than that, but for the sake of not hurting anything, we're not doing much more than idling, so we can make sure that the oil pressure system, cool system, transmission shifts, and it does. We took it 1/8 of a mile or so to the car wash yesterday, and just make sure everything's functioning, and everything functions just like it should. So I'm not mad, honestly. Was it a fair trade for labor? Depends on how you look at it. I'm fortunate enough to have the tools, skills, and experience to tackle something like this with little effort. The issues with this car I was able to get sorted, and it looks like it just needs a new operating system, which I have. I just got to buy the credits, put them on the car, make sure it'll idle for longer than 2 seconds, solve the security system issue, and it should go back to James here in the next week or 2. I wanted to take a week off and focus on this car because, one, I don't want a dead car in front of my driveway or my garage, because that's my, surgery area for things that need to be worked on. 2, I wanted to see what kind of car we had, what other underlying issues it may or may not have had, and what I needed to make a plan for going forward. And honestly, so far, outside of head gaskets and some odd and stuff, I didn't even buy spark plugs. I just cleaned them with a wire brush really good, put them back in there because I wanted to see if there was like a rod knock or a cam issue, anything of the sort. And so far, idling it, starts out about 40 pounds. When it gets up to operating temperature, it drops to about 30, 32 pounds of oil pressure, which is plenty fine for a small block Chevy, Gen 2, no less. And it sounds healthy. It sounds really, really healthy. So, be that as it may, we'll get the exhaust put on here, O2 sensors hooked up, so it'll at least know what's going on, and drive it. I will put tires on it, okay? We'll get fresh front set of 285s. We'll put a more streetable, fall, winter friendly rear tire on there and take the slicks off. But this is just something for $225. I was able to put 4 tires in the car and have them mounted. So that's why I did what I did. But for now, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at all. Not at all. I don't really have a whole lot left to do for today, other than to clean up the yard, which I'm going to do after this. We'll get on that probably next week and get that sorted so I get that back to James. This looks really good. I can't get over how well this car looks after just a little bit of elbow grease. We'll probably spend a couple days really deep cleaning it and trying to get the paint to pop a little bit. Most of what I needed was in the garage, believe it or not. Hoses and fittings. I don't have chrome stem caps, but I had these in the Durango, and they fit and snug all the way down for any potential leaks a stem might have. So I just slapped them on there for time being. Mostly everything's connected. Capped off any vacuum lines that didn't go anywhere, didn't make any sense. There's stuff plugged in that probably doesn't work. Whatever. It wouldn't be a 90s gym if it didn't have a check engine light or two, and it's got a Christmas tree on the dash of random shit, from the ABS to the traction control to the EGR system, so whatever. But for the purposes of the personal challenge I set for myself for this car, everything is met. Everything is met. I did quite a bit of changes. It looks really good under here too. I just have the car cover sitting on it. But I'm pretty proud of what I was able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And for that, can't be mad. I'm not going to be able to make the event in the car The Durango's more than capable. It's way faster, if I'm honest. And you know, it's road ready as it sits. So we're gonna get off here in a second, clean it up because it's long overdue for a good deep cleaning, and get ready to go to work here in a little bit. But that's where we're at with it, man. That's where we're at. And for anybody watching this that's maybe a little tight on funds or in high school, I hear I have a lot of high school subscribers. Here's the money element of where I'm at. I credited the car about $1,500 worth of value because looking around Marketplace, you can get a fairly clean, and I use that term loosely, a fairly clean LT1, not LS1, because they are worth a lot more than the LT cars for whatever reason. You can get a V8 LT1 F-body in a range of conditions, anywhere from about $700 to $1,500. And this car, as I saw it, had aftermarket wheels, hideous ones, but aftermarket wheels. It was mostly there. And he said it ran, and I trusted him on it, and it did. It was an ether and a battery, and that thing fired right up. So that was half the battle. So I credited $1,500. The wheels were originally purchased for the GTO. So I have $1,800 on the wheels. They started out at $3,800 on Marketplace, and I've literally messaged this dude every month for a year until I had the money to pick up these wheels. If you were to replicate these wheels or call CCW today to get another set built, based on my research, you're looking at about $8,000 to $10,000. So, but like I said, that's the wheels of themselves is a bit of an anomaly, okay? Because it's not every day you're going to find a vague Marketplace ad that just happens to be made by a much older gentleman. He was way older than me, and they came off his brother's car, who was even older than him. And they basically got tired of looking at the wheels sitting in the garage. So that's what I mean by that. But you can get a nice set of period correct, you know, these are two-piece, true two-piece wheels for anywhere from, we'll say $1,000 to $2,000. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. So $1,800 on the wheels. I'm not going to credit them to this build because they were for the GTO. I already had them on hand. The intake two pieces were $25. The machine work was $200. Pretty much everything else was here. The long tubes were $100. There's my labor in it, which you could factor that in there, but we'll say with the value I credited the car, plus everything I've actually spent, like parts-wise on the car, not including the wheels, but we'll count the tires, I'm probably in this thing maybe $2,200, maybe. The gasket kit was a typical O'Reilly's head gasket kit. That was $55, but it was the wrong head gasket, so I had to buy the head gasket separately. They were another $70. You get what I'm saying? It was just a lot of nickel and dime stuff. Then, on top of the fact, I had a lot of extra parts from just crap over the years, so things like bolts and washers and nuts and that kind of jazz I already had on hand. That's why this deal didn't bother me too much, because I've been doing it for so long. The battery was $120. I think it's got a 3-year warranty or something. So you got to factor the battery in, head gaskets, like I said, the head work and so forth. We're at about $2,200, give or take, in the car. And then there's the wheels, if you want to count those, up to $1,800. So $4,000, $4,500. That's not bad for a clean cruiser. Okay, we'll probably have another $150 and an eBay Y pipe for the long tube, so I can put the exhaust system back on it. Then say another $100 and O2 sensors. So now you're looking at $4,600, $4,700. That is a very, 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 very achievable number for somebody in high school. Okay, you work during the summer. My kid was able to save up $2,500 or so over the course of 2 years, just working in the summer every other week. So if you're working, you know, 3-4 days a week, $4,500 is pretty easy to come up with. You know, my other kid works in Whataburger, averages about $1,300 a month in working 3-4 days a week. So this has got to give you guys, you know, some numbers. Like if you put the work in over the summer, not to mention any side hustles or mowing lawns or flipping parts or whatever that you come up with. And even for you older guys too, who may have kids and want a hot rod or had a hot rod a long time ago, and the excuse is always the same: I ain't got the money, don't have the time. Well, I got this thing together in about 30 days, and we'll say value-wise, it's probably sitting at about $4,500 if you count everything, including the free stuff. okay, and the stuff I already had on hand. That's not bad. I know a guy who bought a GTO out of a out of a tow yard that had been sitting in their yard that they had towed over years ago, for $5,000, and it's rough. I mean, it's a nice car overall, but it's pretty rough. So the sub $5,000 mark it's pretty achievable in the, we'll say, the gearhead genre, as long as you are able to accommodate whatever the car needs for little to nothing. So that's where we're at. I'm excited. It's super cool. It looks really good. It's a nice car overall. It's pretty solid. The engine's really strong. I'll probably put an idle clip here at the end of the video for you, just because. And yeah, so I'm gonna get back to it, and thanks for watching.